would hold a hearing on Medicare for All. Very, very disturbing. She said she's not going to be intending to hold hearings on Medicare for All, saying she thought it would be interesting to have the authors of these bills come to testify and explain what their bill does, and have members ask them questions. This is what she thought about saying, and then she's like, "Nah, we're not going to do that." The Energy and Commerce Health Subcommittee, according to Politico's chair, told reporters Wednesday afternoon she'd hold a hearing on the Democrats' Medicare for All proposals, a seeming break with committee chairman Frank Pallone of New Jersey that would mark a significant victory for the party's progressive wing. But by Wednesday evening, it literally took a few hours for her to backtrack on that. The California Democrat was having second thoughts, telling Politico's Adam Cankren that her subcommittee needed to prioritize shoring up Obamacare and crafting sweeping drug price reforms. And then she's like, if there's any spare time, and then an outcome which she suggested was unlikely, she said, we'll tackle Medicare for All. Oh, okay. So you got a entire 2-year Congress, not even a few hours to talk about Medicare for All. Good luck keeping things the way you want them to be, because things are going to change, and if Medicare for All is not acted upon very significantly by these people, something that has a 70% approval rating in this country, I think they're going to start to see some real problems and some things that they're not going to like to see. For example, or maybe, I don't know, more Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's, and they're not just going to be tweeting. They're going to be, just like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is, by the way. I'm not saying all she does is tweet. That's not true at all. What she does do is fight for policy, and that is what she's going to start doing, and that's what she's going to get other people to do. Like, there's movements. There's actual people who actually care about issues. This may be hard for people to understand, but there's actually people who care about issues really, really badly, and they want these people in, and they're going to do anything they can to get you out and put these people in, so it may be in your best interest, and a shoe, to start talking, maybe just a little bit about Medicare for All, when you have a 2-year period in Congress, and your first thought is, okay, I don't want to talk about Medicare for All. So that's, again, it's some pretty awful stuff. What seems a more likely explanation here is we literally do not have 4 hours to spare. Sir, what seems to be a more really likely explanation than we literally do not have 4 hours to spare to discuss Medicare for All in the next years are things like, we don't want to talk about it. We're afraid of it. It would be embarrassing for the Democrats to not support Medicare for All. But the excuse is, sorry, Jimmy, your dad doesn't have time to play baseball today. Excuse really does not cut it, frankly, in that situation. Just like literally come out, state your position. And by the way, something tells me she's doing this very, very completely. She's not for Medicare for All. Neither is a large part of the party establishment, and she's going to have to come to terms with it. What would really be helpful is just so we know who to look out for, shall we say, is for the people who are against it to come out and say they are against it, so we could, as the progressive wing, and the actual Democratic base of the Democratic Party, so that we actually head out there and we deal with that. We face that head on. That's what I think is going to need to happen. And that's what I think really will as time continues. So, yeah, it's going to be an interesting thing to watch. What will happen in the House with Medicare for All? That is something we will be following very, very closely on this show and on the Spencer Walsh Radio Network. Trust me on that one. All right. Now we head from Washington across the pond in London to say the United Kingdom's democratic governance is showing signs of strain the day after Prime Minister Theresa May's proposed deal to exit the European Union was rejected by the Parliament, and an unprecedented landslide would be a considerable understatement. That's because the massive vote against May's compromise Brexit plan by a coalition of members of Parliament who want an even more radical break from the EU, and those who want to remain close or even inside the trading bloc, reveals something far closer to a systemic meltdown that's already in progress. I mean, thank God this isn't happening here, because literally they have about 6, pretty much to sum it up in a sentence. For those of you who have not been really following this, which is completely understandable, I do kind of find it interesting. In my busy life, I try to follow it in my spare time. From what I like, pretty much all they do is they have about like 5 different options or so on the table. They include no deal, which is going at Brexit, awful thing, which is pretty much just doing the Brexit with no strings attached, no kind of negotiations, no contingency plan, and things would just fall apart. No one really wants that, I don't think, but they would very much care. Like their idea is they want to have some sort of a deal that kind of makes things a little bit softer. Some people are pushing for a soft Brexit. Some people are pushing for a second referendum to determine the same issue: should we leave the EU again? Because some people on the left believe that it was unfairly done. Some people say, what are the other things? Like there's no consensus on any of it right now at the moment. So, so the Prime Minister also ignored the fact that, as pro-EU voters continue to point out, the margin of favor in Brexit was a narrow one. The measure passed by a 52-48 margin, as the Brexit referendum was pointed out. So, yeah, this is a little bit of a clip that shows you really how people took as tact in Britain on voting in this bill, and it's not very good. This is from Wales.
We've had the referendum. The vote was conclusive.
52-48 conclusive?
That's democracy. It could have been one vote.
It's not conclusive.
It's democracy. The point is, the decision has been made. We've had 40 years, supposedly, to sort things out. Nothing has improved. We're bailing them out all the time.
Totally disagree with that. If you actually look at Wales, it amazes me that the people in the valleys who are getting more from the EU than anybody else actually voted to come out. It's like turkeys voting for Christmas as far as the valleys are concerned.
From the valleys, turkeys. I'm a valley boy.
I'm just saying.
I brought them bread up in every industry, in the mining industry.
Did I call them that? I didn't call. I said like turkeys.
Exactly.
Thank you.
So that's a comparison.
Thank you.
Total comparison.
I don't listen to anybody else. I make up my own mind. I'm my own man.
But you read in from biased newspapers
and
the BBC, which is the most hypocritical setup in the face of the earth.
Well, hold on. What's wrong with another vote? What have you got to fear about a second referendum?
Exactly.
What if it becomes non-conclusive again? What if it went 52-48 the other way? Do we have another referendum?
It's a good point, isn't it?
It is a good point. It is a good point. But all I'm saying is, what are the alternatives? One, you accept May's deal. No deal? Does anybody really want a no deal?
Why are you afraid of
Does
no deal?
Does anybody want a no deal?
What do you got to remember? This country fought a world war and got out of it. We raised from the ashes. So this fear project that they've got, don't worry about it. Britain has got the technology, the ability. We've got the people to rebuild. We don't need Europe.
I disagree.
All right, so yeah, that's pretty much the debate happening right now in Britain. That it continues to pretty much plague everybody. Like no one can make a decision, and this guy, the Brexit conflict continues. Like this guy's like, yeah, 52-48, it was conclusive, and they're like, what if it went the other way? Well, that'll be non-conclusive, obviously. There a decision about those. Yeah. So that kind of shows their little mindset coming to this, but. Still, the fact that, like, again, you see all the options that one guy cited there who was like, if we get May's, accept May's no deal, do a second referendums, just take note of all the possible things going down right now in Brexit. Pretty much what happened recently was that Theresa May faced a no confidence vote. So that was awful for her. She survived it narrowly after her deal lost. Her compromise to leave from Brexit lost, like, literally by record numbers, and whatever lost that badly a vote in the parliament in like ever. But what happened from there is Corbyn called no confidence. She survived it. Right now, what she's going to do is she's going to present a plan B that could be some kind of a no deal. It could be some kind of a negotiating with Corbyn, renegotiating with the Corbyn across the aisle. Corbyn's leader of the opposition party, Jeremy Corbyn, of the Labour Party there. Or it could be some sort of something else. I don't know. Whatever it could be. There's always twists and turns in this Brexit development. So yeah. While she has steadfastly refused to say that she thinks Brexit is actually a good idea, May committed her government to carrying out what she describes the will of the people to leave the EU, but has also worked to limit the inevitable economic damage of cutting ties with the nation's leading trade partners. She's had the situation she's pretty much had her entire job was to try and please everyone, end up pleasing no one. Everyone's very mad, and no one really gets the right answer on this, which is it really kind of sucks for them. So now this compromise deal that is being rejected now by 230 votes. There appears to be no majority in Parliament for any other version of Brexit. The political system seems now to have arrived at an impasse just 10 weeks before the country's membership in the Union expires on March 29th. That's when they're out. If they don't get a deal signed by March 29th, that's a no-deal situation. That's an awful situation that no one really actually wants to be in, except for that guy who's like, yeah, why don't we just put ourselves in a situation we're going to have to rebuild from even though we can't avoid it. Let's say, like, yeah, why not jump off the cliff? We can rebuild. Yeah, that's totally fine. It defies all logic. Like, putting yourself in a position that you are going to struggle from just because you know it can rebuild. Like, what is the point of that? It's a situation that, thank God, we don't have to deal with here in the U.S. But it could have. Here's the thing: it could have some pretty global consequences with the market, with EU trading and British trading, with the United States. It could affect us too, although it really won't in the way that it's going to affect Britain. It's going to be a massive political change for them. But the big question is right now, I think, is no deal. Do we let no deal occur, or what they want to do is postpone Article 50, which is the clause in the negotiations that makes the EU forced to come back at. Like, do they want to postpone their date of leaving from the EU? That's what Article 50 would do. So Article 50 was triggered. They started to leave the EU. Now they just say we need to postpone it because we're not ready, or they just want to do no deal, which is the awful situation that we all know about. The parliamentary gridlock, a clear lack of options for how to proceed in a country without a written constitution or any rules for procedures for how to implement a referendum result that most people's elected representatives see as profoundly damaging, has prompted calls for a second referendum in some quarters, aka J.K. Rowling, in-show rage and others, in a wave of bleakly comic commentary online. I don't want to confuse you with technical language, says one British pundit, but basically nobody knows what the F happens right now. So before the Brexit referendum introduced an element of direct democracy in the parliamentary system, a prime minister who lost a vote on the central issue of her government by even one vote, let alone 230, would have been expected to resign or call a general election, because that's what you got to do in Britain. So, you're either out if you lose that badly, which would be nice for some people in the United States government, or you have to call a general election to see if you have some power. Theresa May did that. She didn't lose, but she came very, very close to losing. The leader of the opposition party, Jeremy Corbyn, has attempted to force May to step down by calling for a vote of no confidence in her government, but she's widely expected to win the vote. She did, and remain in office, since even the staunchest opponents of her Conservative Party and her Ulster Unionist allies fear a Corbyn-led government more than they hate May. As the clock ticks down, May scrambles to come up with a revised Brexit plan before the country crashes out with no deal, a possibility described in near apocalyptic terms. It was would literally likely result in all air traffic being halted, massive traffic jams around ports, shortages of food and medicine, and the collapse of a country's manufacturing industry. Contentious debate over a possible second referendum has prompted really real fears of political violence and from a fringe of extreme nationalist Brexit supporters, which is pretty crazy. In recent weeks, members of the Conservative Party who want a closer relationship with Europe or a second referendum, like Nick Bowles and Anna Soubry, have been really subjected to death threats and verbal abuse by far-right activists in yellow vests. Sound familiar? It doesn't have any relation to the French protests, but in MAGA hats on the streets around Parliament.
We have to be absolutely... I do object to being called a Nazi, actually.
Right. Apologies if you're offended by what you're listening to.
I just think this is...
Yeah, so that is her on British TV. Anna Soubry facing Nazi taunts. Yeah. So this is her after the interview.
Anna, why are you going against them? When you scraped him with a small majority. Why are you doing that, Anna?
Independent against you.
In your constituents.
The swing against me was...
Anna, you There is the swing against Theresa May. I'll get in front of you. Strike Tim with a very small majority. Move out the way, Lammy. You're a traitor. So soon.
Lammy. Did you just call me Lammy?